Hello guys, it's your favorite lawyer again. Welcome back to my channel. So today we'll be talking about defamation. Now, defamation is also known as defamation of character because it is a false statement aimed to malign someone or injure a person's character. So it is popularly known as defamation of character. For a statement to be defamatory, it means that it's a false statement that will put the person's character at risk and make reasonable people in the society to shun or to avoid the person due to that statement. Therefore, defamation is an act that endangers or injures somebody's character, somebody's goodwill, somebody's image and personality in the society. Now, there are two forms of defamation. The first one is libel, which is defamation in a written form, which is a more permanent form. The second form of defamation is slander, and this form of defamation is oral. Slander is just an oral defamatory speech. Whether it's made on air, it is slander. Both of them are defamatory, and both of them have the same consequences because both of them fall under defamatory speeches or defamatory statements. At this point, it is important to note that not every insulting statement is considered to be a defamatory statement. Or where persons are fighting, are involved in a fight, the insults or the statements that are made in the course of the fights are not considered defamatory statements. So it's important to note that it's not all insulting words, and not in all cases that you can say one has defamed you or has defamed you. So not all situations are considered as defamatory statements. So for a statement to be considered defamatory, it must be one that can injure a person's character in the image of reasonable and right-thinking members of the society. Also, if a statement is capable of making members of the society to scorn at the person or to bring down the person's self-esteem, then it is considered as defamatory. Another instance is if the statements capable of affecting a person's financial standing, the person's financial foundation, then it will be considered as defamatory. For instance, some people's goodwill is what sells. This is why people use stars or the notable people in the public, artists, as their brand ambassadors. So if a defamatory statement is made against such a person, it can affect the person's financial standing. So if a statement is capable of doing that to someone, then it is considered a defamatory statement. Then another instance is if a statement is capable of casting doubt to someone's professional reputation, it's also a defamatory statement. So in this case, if a person now reputably known as a lawyer and then you're refuting the person's work and saying, oh no, this person is a fake or is not a learned lawyer or something. I mean, you're trying to cast doubt on the person's professional reputation, then it is also capable of being a defamatory statement. So you will notice that in either of these instances, either it's affecting the person's professional reputation or the person's financial standing, or is capable of making the person subject to scorn and subject to making the person like a laughing stock, and lowering the person's esteem. Then in these instances, any of these instances would classify as a defamatory statement. One key aspect of the discussion to take note of is that defamation under the Nigerian law can be brought under a civil action or a criminal action, because under the Nigerian law, defamation is a criminal offense. So by virtue of section 375 of the Criminal Code Act and section 392 of the Penal Code Act, anyone who publishes a defamatory material has committed a misdemeanor and is liable to a prison term of 1 year. And if the person publishes a defamatory material knowing it to be defamatory, the person is now liable for a term of 2 years. The difference is that one is that you publish a defamatory material whether you know it to be false or not. We've already committed an offense, we've committed a crime, it means the manner. But the second leg is that if it can be established that the person knew it was false when the person published it, then the punishment is double, because the the prison term is for 2 years. So it's covered under the criminal code, which covers the southern part of Nigeria, and the penal code that covers the northern part of Nigeria. So defamation is a crime in Nigeria, even though proving it and establishing it is another whole ball game altogether. But it's a crime in Nigeria, and that can also fall under a civil action. But for the purposes of this video, we're basically treating the civil action, because in most other parts of the world, defamation is not a crime. It's just only a civil matter. Now, since we are talking about defamation as a civil action, it is important to know how the courts treat and handle cases of defamation. Historically, under the common law jurisdiction, of which Nigeria is a part of, and Nigeria borrowed from the English common law jurisdiction. So historically, one's reputation was a thing of value. One's reputation, one's dignity was essential. So personal honor was very, very paramount in everyday dealings, in everyday affairs. So defamation developed on this foundation of one's reputation being very paramount, very important and essential. Therefore, a defamatory material was considered, have been from the beginning, a defamatory material is already considered false. So that someone has made a defamatory statement, it's already considered false. And you recall that for the statement to be defamatory, it must fall under those four headings I listed earlier. That it must have been capable of injuring or bringing down somebody's esteem, and it should have put the person to scorn or brought down the person's financial standing or the person's professional reputation, and the rest of them. So if you have established that the statement is defamatory, that's all that a claimant, so as a claimant is the person that has gone to court and instituted the matter in court, that's all the person just needs to state, that the statement is defamatory. And as long as it is considered defamatory because it has fallen under those factors that make it defamatory, it's not just an insult or something during a fight. So once it's considered defamatory, it's already presumed false. So the court presumed every defamatory statement as false, because the court already believes that the person has dignity, and the person is already a truthful person. So the burden of proving anything in that matter lies on the defendant. That's the people that have been sued, the people that made the defamatory statement. It's for them to now prove that what they have said is true, that is the defamatory statement is not false. So the burden of the whole matter lies on the defendant to prove that the statement is true. That is why, by virtue of the Defamation Act, truth is a defense, which borrows its leaf from the common law principle that justification is a defense. So if you can say that the defamatory statement is not false, but that it is true, it is a defense, and then that person goes free. So the body was on the defendant, and as the Supreme Court for a long time over the years ruled on cases of defamation based on this principle, that the defamatory material is already presumed false, while the defendant has to prove that it is true for the defendant to go free. Now, on the wake of freedom of expression, which is gaining ground globally, there has been a slight shift in the burden of proving anything in a defamatory matter. So in a 2014 case of Ekong and Otop, the Supreme Court of Nigeria placed the burden on the claimant himself to prove that the defamatory statement was true, rather than placing it on the defendants has always been. While that was a case that happened in 2014, it hasn't still gotten much traction. But in a more recent case in 2023, that is in the case of one Dr. Jeremiah Abalaka and Professor Ibironke Akinsete, the court specifically went into detail, placing the whole burden on the claimant to prove that the defamatory statement was false. This happened because in this case of Dr. Jeremiah Abalaka, is a medical doctor that produced the vaccine for AIDS and claimed that it was capable of curing AIDS. So the military administered the vaccine on some persons, and one of them, and he was one of the defendants in the matter, was one of the defendants that Dr. Jeremiah sued. Dr. Jeremiah Abalaka sued 3 people. So these 3 defendants, the third defendant was administered the vaccine by the military, and the man claimed that the AIDS he had did not go, wasn't cured by the vaccine. And so the defendants, they set up a press conference which was televised on air, and they stated that the claimant, which is Dr. Abalaka's, was a liar, he was a cheat, and that his vaccine didn't work. In fact, the third defendant that was administered the vaccine stated that some of his colleagues that were administered that vaccine died in the process, and he was aggrieved because he felt that they were used as guinea pigs to try the vaccine. So they wanted to tell the world that the claimants' vaccines do not work, so that it doesn't deceive more people. Now, in making these allegations on air, fell under slander. But again, the televised conference was now reported by some print media, some newspapers, and it now also fell under libel. So the claimant sued this defendant for both libel and slander. Now, but when they took the matter to court, from the High Court to the Court of Appeal, the three that now up to the Supreme, the court dismissed the claimant's suit, stating that the claimant did not prove that the vaccine worked. So the claimant should prove that the defamatory materials were false by proving that the vaccine worked and didn't kill people. So the burden of was now placed on the claimant. So this case has now that's what about to bear that the burden of proving the falsity or the truth, whichever one, of a defamatory material is shifting to the claimant. So it may no longer be sufficient in the next future for a claimant to just state that a defamatory statement is defamatory, or a statement that has been made is defamatory, whether a written statement or an oral statement. It may no longer be sufficient for a claimant to just say that such a statement is defamatory. That's all. But the claimant should now go ahead to prove the falsity of that statement, to say that the statement is false, especially with regards to the nature of the defamatory statement. In this case, the people have said that the man said he was not cured, the defendant was not cured. So it actually behoves on the claimant to state evidence of how the vaccine has worked and who it has worked for. So this trend is now pushing the burden of shifting the burden of proof to the claimant, and it's giving more light to the emerging trend on freedom of expression, freedom of speech in our global sphere today. So the next issue will be to look at what a claimant can request for when a claimant sues for defamation. So a claimant can request for monetary damages in compensation. Claimant can also request for the defamatory statement to be retracted and pulled down. Claimant can also request for an injunction restraining the defendants from continuously parading or from continuously defaming him. Another request or remedy available to the claimant is to also request for an apology letter from the defendant. These are the remedies that are available for the civil action, not as a criminal action. Finally, under the limitation laws, in Lagos State, for example, the laws provide that for your action of defamation to succeed, it must be brought within 3 years of the publication, when the publication was done, when the defamatory statement was published. So you have to bring it within 3 years. So this means that you should not sleep on your rights, because if the time elapses, you cannot now bring that action again. And it is important to note that different states in Nigeria have their own limitation laws. So different states may have different provisions. But in this instance, we just considered the limitation laws of Lagos State. So you must bring your action for defamation within 3 years. In conclusion, a person's good name can be legally protected. A person's good name ought to and can be legally protected. So you have the backing of the law to protect your good name before the limitation laws catch up against you. And that is it. So if you've gained any knowledge from this video, do well to comment in the comment section below, and also like and subscribe to the channel. Please also put on your notification bell so that you will get notified when I drop another video. Thank you, and see you in my next video. Bye.